My name is Jordan Farmer. This is Uncommon Conversations, a podcast series where we try to expand the knowledge base and database, so to speak, that you have to go off of for political discussions, to try to broaden your worldview, and to generally try to have interesting conversations. Today's guest is a guy from Bulgaria named Vasil, I think is how you would pronounce it. Hello. Got some people coming in. And it's going to be really interesting to get a Bulgarian's perspective on modern politics, the crypto space, as well as a few different things. Let's see here. I think he just came in. Hopefully we will be joining soon. Just got to make a request, sir, to come in. It won't let me invite you. Interesting. Vasil. Vasil? Is it allowing you to make a request to come in? Alrighty. What's up, Vinny?
Actually, the technical issue in the case was that I couldn't make a request from the PC. So I guess the only option on Instagram is to join from my phone.
Okay.
And apologies for the.
Hey, how you doing, boss?
Just a moment.
Okay.
All right. Apologies for the delay. I was actually expecting to do this on the PC, but the Instagram issue that we talked about.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out. It's kind of a complicated system. At some point, I'll start doing these only on the PC, but we'll see. We lost him for a second. Hopefully, he will come back. It dropped. We'll see. We'll see if he comes back on here.
Sorry about this. I literally just flipped my phone, and the connection dropped. Should be better now, I guess.
Okay.
Let's go up this setup call. All right. Much better now, I guess.
You're sideways, but
okay.
There we go.
No. I'll make it work. I don't have a phone stand or anything, It's completely improvised, and I was expecting to do this on the PC, but that's a no-go, I guess.
This works just fine. Got to do what we can do.
Yep. All right. I'll cut the camera feed. How's that?
That works fine.
Perfect. So I don't have to worry about making the phone stand upright.
Yeah, that works just fine. That works
Awesome.
just fine.
Perfect.
All right, man. We'll jump into it. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Uncommon Conversations. Today's guest is coming to us from Bulgaria, which I think is really awesome. Definitely a unique country in Europe, and is going to bring a unique perspective. Uh, Please, sir, take it away. Introduce us to yourself, where you were born and raised, and we'll go from there.
All right. I was born in Plovdiv and actually raised between here and a small mountain village in the Rhodope Mountains. So I'm generally raised between a semi-large city, one of the oldest cities in the world actually, and a small mountain city, which is an excellent place to go to the mountains and take a break. So I'm pretty much an average guy, Now, an average guy with actually this is the first time I'm doing a podcast or something, for which I apologize for my um uh,
You don't
stage fright,
gotta
I guess.
apologize for anything, brother.
All right, cool. So I'm just an average guy really. That I just uh, have a keen interest for lots of stuff, from economy to philosophy to whatever you can think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to say or ask what makes Bulgaria politically different from most of Europe. When people think of Europe, they usually think of socialized medicine. They usually think of sort of the modern, left wing. A lot of transgenderism, a lot of these types of things. What makes Bulgaria different, or is it different than these other countries?
It's very different, and actually on the topic of what you call socialized medicine, actually it has some perks. I'm very right wing on some things, and medicine is actually one of the very few things that I'm extremely far left leaning, and there's quite a good reason for it. I mean, when you look at businesses, like from a business perspective, most businesses are for profit. However, education and medicine, they should be profit should be secondary to service. So it should be as regulated as possible. That's in complete contrast to general business, for which I think we should have generally far lower taxes. And something that strikes me really hard about the US medical system is that you have absolutely insane bills. And that's not free market, it's actually pretty much a cartel, for which you have $300 for some pills, which is absolutely insane. 25, 20, 2,500, I think, $2,500, just to get an ambulance in some states, which is absolutely insane. So now our medical system has a lot of problems, definitely a lot. But if it wasn't for the corruption and if it had some better management in general, actually this is the way, but a much better way for the system to work. Apologies, as I said, first time I'm doing something like that.
Oh yeah, no problem, man.
So
That's awesome. I appreciate the response. Yeah, I didn't know that Bulgaria had socialized medicine. I think I think that there's certain benefits to making sure that competition and cheaper prices and good service are still brought in those industries. But I think when human lives are in the balance and it's about your health, it's different than other industries. And
exactly.
with the education side of things, um, I think we just need to make sure we have good public education. Most people in America are fine with our K through 12 system. They just want to, or they want to like improve it. They want to have it evolve and change it. But fundamentally, they believe education matters that much to every person. And so with those two areas, and some people would expand it to other things like housing, and there's different ways of approaching it. Um,
I don't
I
think
think that
housing actually falls into that category for a number of reasons. Mostly because it's very intertwined with other businesses like construction, sourcing materials, and so on. I mean, if housing gets socialized, that means that generally the government will tell you where to buy a house. That's the end point. I mean, just speak communism, and we had it here. We were a communist country after all, for 40 years or something. But actually, let's dig a bit deeper into the public medicine team. You can have what you call socialized medicine, uh, but and still actually have competition. However, this competition should not be between hospitals. It should be between specialists. I mean, if a specialist is good and he gets more visits, more patients, and he's pretty much more trusted, he should, of course, get paid better. And that's what will improve medicine in general. And doctors working in hospitals, uh, it can be made so hospitals, uh, how should I put it, are pretty much the medium through which doctors work. And it's the doctors that are actually in competition. So you have the very left-leaning social hospitals, but the very right-leaning doctors who are actually in competition. Also,
so
in terms
so
of
the labor side is in competition, but the business side is publicly owned.
exactly, that's my point. And if this is implemented, it can actually lead to quite great results. However, I think Scotland is perhaps the only place which something like that is fairly well implemented. The Scottish NHS, not the British one, because the English one is from people who live in England. As far as I know, it also has some issues, and the Scottish one is better. Also, on the topic of medicine and prescriptions and so on, you don't have a competition between pharmaceutical companies because they pretty much work, like cartels. It's not much different. They can hike prices as much as they want. So if in the US you pay medical insurances, and those insurances cover most of the stuff, but those insurances, some people, some doctors works with some companies, and other doctors work with other companies. The hospital itself may work with third company. I've read about such cases, and that's absolutely insane. So I think there should be state by state or city by city, depending on how much the city actually needs to sustain its medical system in taxes. But those taxes go up directly to the hospitals, so they can maintain the medium. And in those hospitals is the actual doctors that are in competition, but they all get the money from the same place. So there is no competition between insurance companies. And insurance companies should either have standardized rates, or they will just pull the insurances into government regulated, not bank account pool. But that's just an idea, and how I think, what I think will alleviate most of the issues.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think the insurance companies getting involved like they have, it's insurance is the wrong business model for healthcare, just
Absolutely.
period. Because
It's made for profit, and
Yeah.
we're talking about huge profit. And hospitals are pretty much run like hotels, from what I've seen. I've never lived in the US, but from what I've seen.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good comparison. It's basically like if you had hotel insurance for when you might need to travel somewhere
Yeah, pretty much.
and have that and you can only have certain hotels that you're allowed to go to. And yeah, it's a messed up system. During World War II, the government started to regulate how much you could pay your workers because they were just regimenting everything, and I everything was rationed, food was rationed, everything was rationed during the war effort. And when this happened, companies tried to find loopholes and ways of going around it to uh, help compensate their workers without it being direct pay. And so they started giving them these healthcare insurance packages, and the healthcare system in America was set up, and across the world really was set up by John D. Rockefeller, and it was very much a drugs and services model where it's about keeping you on prescriptions. It wasn't a health system. It's not about making sure that you have the best food and the best exercise and the best, approach to life. It was about taking advantage of the problems and trying to create profitable solutions for them.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of flaws in the
you.
system that were built in from the beginning.
They make the problem for you, and then they give you the solution at a certain price. It's pretty much what we see now with the COVID pandemic, quote unquote. I mean, I'm not going to dive into conspiracy theory, but Klaus Schwab released the Great Reset COVID-19 book a month before the outbreak, which is what the fuck. Sorry for the language.
I didn't know that, actually. I didn't know he released a book on these types of things, but right before it happened. But
just before it happened, I mean, how could he had the book ready before the actual pandemic? It's
almost as if it's planned.
Yep. We see the patterns there. So afterwards, I'm fairly sure the vaccine, quote unquote, was pre-made. And the biggest issue I have with the vaccine, for ignoring all conspiracy theories about chipping you and so on, there is a major issue with these vaccines. They give you a temporary immunity boost, like you get the shot, your immune system skyrockets for 2 or 3 months. You get a new high, but afterwards you get a new low, and it's very hard to get to your previous healthy levels pre-vaccinated of your immune system balance. And the human immune system is it's very delicate. If you mess with it, it won't operate properly if it's overtuned or undertuned. So the only people I think those vaccines actually have a merit for are people with immune systems who are already trashed, So if a person with a good immune system takes the vaccine instead of relying on natural immunity, what you get is a permanently, how should I say, nerfed immune system. And you pretty much have to take those shots on a subscription in order to keep it in a, semi-functioning level. Not to mention the skyrocket of heart issues after those vaccines. That's what happened in the UK, actually. At least it was documented there, but it happened everywhere. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. So it's pretty much
the vaccine. Yeah, it's a totally different type of vaccine, a new model, and it seems to have many bad secondary side effects. Most of the people in my life that I know that have gotten the virus multiple times have been vaccinated. Now, there's a chicken and egg problem there, where some people already have weak immune systems and want the vaccines more than others, and then they then are more susceptible anyways. But something that's interesting with the whole discussion surrounding the whether or not this pandemic was planned or just taken advantage of, but an accident shouldn't have gone out, is the timeline for when it started. Most people think of it as early 2020 or even really late 2019, but it came from Wuhan, China. And when I went and I looked at the death rate in China, which is ironically a data set not many people discuss, July of 2019, it started to take off exponentially, the number of deaths in China per capita, per person. And so it continued on through the pandemic
People
that we
cover that.
understood and we started to respond to. So that data would indicate that this all started in July of 2019, which means that Klaus Schwab and many of these people would have had July all the way till February, when the real big response to this happened, to coordinate and to plan and to create a plan of execution. Most of the time, when we have one of these major events happening, sometimes it can be a false flag type deal, or they are making it happen, but often it's a phenomenon that is going to happen anyways, and they either let it happen or they just simply take advantage of it once it's already happened, but they couldn't really prevent it. Although I think it's good to know how this started, I think the most important thing to point out is how the people responded to it. The people that went for control, the people that shut down people's businesses, and the people that, in a totalitarian Nazi-like way, forced people to get vaccines in order to continue to be able to work. That was evil, and that is a giant problem and needs to be focused on and addressed. Absolutely. Regardless of the origins exactly. Like, I think it's a good discussion, but it's not necessarily something we can affect, or that really, like, even if we come to an answer, what do we do next,
Yep. Actually, the big issue out of this whole pandemic war stuff that's going on right now is actually the end result. And that's why I think it doesn't matter if it was planned or not. What matters is that the actions that the governments take are very coordinated. You see the same stuff happening all over the world. You see the new young leaders, as they're called, all go to Davos for annual meetings, and they all coordinate all this stuff there. So we are looking at now our government. Pretty much, it's not a political organization. Yet at the same time, it pretty much influences politics everywhere, which is absolutely insane. It's government on top of government on top of government. We have the EU over us, which I think joining the EU in the first place was a terrible mistake. One of the worst things actually that happened in Bulgaria in '97, our president gave our highest medal, our highest honors, to George Soros for bringing democracy, quote unquote, in Bulgaria. And that's when actually everything went to shit. After '97, we had the biggest crisis you can imagine, and we still feel the repercussions of those times.
I did not know that George Soros was involved in Bulgaria in that time, or that
he's involved everywhere.
Yep. Yeah, he is everywhere.
That's like giving a reward to Hitler, Seriously.
It's in that direction. He worked with the Nazis and did some evil stuff. So it's close enough.
He sold out his own people to the Nazis. I mean, how fucked up is that?
Yeah.
You don't sell out your own people. Just like Zelensky did with Ukraine, but that's a whole other matter. It's a very deep topic that's gonna require its own video on the Russia-Ukraine war. It's very deep, and it's actually mostly Zelensky and the West fault. I'm not simping for Russia or anything. They had a lot of faults on their own, but the main cause of this war was actually Zelensky's actions. And,
which ones? Break that down a little bit more.
I have a friend whose family actually live in Lugansk, and told me firsthand that for 8 to 10 years, the Azov battalions have been terrorizing the local non-Ukrainian people. That includes Russians, and actually there are a lot of ethnic Bulgarians living there. And literally 6 years ago, about 5,000, I think, ethnic Bulgarians were killed by the extremist Ukrainian force. I mean, Azov and Bandera. And that was even on official media. And now we're playing first friends with Ukraine, thanks to our flip government. As I said, I'm not simping for Russia or anything. But the case of current events, it's actually Turkey who had the most balanced position with this war. So what has Turkey done? They actually played the mediator. They get their gas from Russia on quite good prices. They act as a mediator between Ukraine and Russia, and they protect their own interests first. They don't take the side of one or the other, and that's actually the most adequate position here. And they actually advocate for peace. Not that Erdogan doesn't have his sins; he has a lot of sins, including the current war that no one talks about against the Kurdish people next to the Iraqi border. But it's very deep. Too many connections to make.
Yeah, there's a lot, especially many Western American people are not super connected with the history there. They don't understand the dynamics, the 2014 coup, and
It's crazy.
the forces behind Zelensky. And again, it's one of these situations where we should focus on the opportunists after the war started or as the war started, that all the money that's been sent there and the response from the international community. A lot of people have made a lot of money and benefited from this whole thing happening, and it feeds this whole great reset scenario. And if when war helps you achieve your mission, you're going to try to start a war. And so just in time, we had this thing happen.
There is actually a thing about the war that's actually the most, in our eyes, the most staggering thing here. Those economic sanctions that Europe has taken against Russia, to show how democratic we are, quote unquote, again. Because, democracy is pretty much a joke right now. Anyway, I know you're American, democracy is a big thing for you, but unfortunately, it's just a farce. With those sanctions against the bad Russia, evil, whatever, the only end result is actually literally crushing Europe's economy. And we're going to have one of the most difficult winters ever. And as a popular quote on Game of Thrones, winter is coming. And winter without the gas from Russia means two things. First, we have to get expensive liquefied gas from America. That's one option, but that's very expensive and very hard on the volume. You can't deliver the whole volume we need through ships. It's going to be insane. There is just not enough tankers actually to do so. Second, we actually buy gas from Russia, but on far inflated prices because it's going to intermediaries. We don't negotiate directly with Gazprom. What our governments do instead is they go to third and fourth parties. Actually, we're going to buy gas right now from the very democratic Republic of Azerbaijan, who the conflict they have with Armenia. Anyway, so we're going to buy liberal democratic gas from Azerbaijan, which is Russian, because Azerbaijan just doesn't have the volume to satisfy our market. At about 200 to 300% increased prices when you account for all the costs. Gas literally more than doubled in price for the past year, and it's gonna get a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, that sucks, and yeah, it's hard to see a good path forward. Are there people in Bulgaria and other countries that are trying to create, more lower technology or alternative ways of warming themselves to prepare for the winter?
Actually, most people here are heating themselves with either wood or charcoal, for example.
Okay.
We're actually not that reliant on gas, but there's the big issue with gas is not heat. We actually have a lot of coal mines as well. The biggest issue with gas is agriculture, because fertilizers are made mostly by
Mm,
gas. I mean, it's the main ingredient.
for sure.
You don't have fertilizer, you don't have pretty much crops the next season. And the biggest importer of fertilizers was Ukraine. Now that Ukraine is out of the questions for fertilizers import, we have to rely on gas to make our own. We actually can make our own, but we need the gas to do so. And that's a whole another layer of issues. Germany, same story. Uh, with the major difference that they're very reliant on gas. Now, more than 50% of the energy mix, I think, comes from gas. Also, a lot of businesses need gas in order to function. Ah, I told you this is crazy hardcore level shit when you get into all the layers, and it's like a giant onion on all
Yeah,
the correlations and stuff.
it's it it's a clusterfuck. It's a shitty situation for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
I want to turn the focus a little bit to Bulgarian politics. Is there a strong anti-globalist, freedom-oriented movement in Bulgaria? Is
Uh,
there power there?
That's actually the biggest issue, I think. The people here are very conservative. Pretty much 80% hate the EU politics going on. Pretty much no one trusts the government here, and that's been like forever. Here, nobody trusts our government. But the problem is that the spirit of the people is crushed. We always make do. I mean, when it comes to survival, we are pretty much survivalists. But when it comes to the government, we pretty much let them do what they want, and we do what we want. It's almost like there is a government that sucks, and for the average people, it's almost like there is no government. It's crazy. But one of the biggest perks here is that there's pretty much no violence and stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, we're a peaceful bunch,
that's good. That's definitely good. That's definitely
unlike in the US. I
should
mean,
be appreciated. Bulgaria was a part of the Soviet Union, right?
yep, and that's also a very long and deep topic. Uh, a lot of people here have a love-hate relationship with the USSR. Because the USSR, when during USSR times, life was easy for the people. Basic stuff was pretty much provided by the government, but very few people asked the question what the cost was. They literally took our gold reserves. We were 100% reliant on Russia for pretty much everything, and people have nostalgia for those things. But the biggest factor for this was not because we were part of the USSR. It was because it was the 70s and 80s, which were generally cool everywhere, even here.
Okay, that's cool. I didn't know. Yeah, I don't know much about that. I don't know much about the way people from those areas think about that. So I appreciate you illuminating that for us. Um, how big is the crypto space in Bulgaria?
Um, small, small actually.
Small.
There are people who invest in crypto, but like me, we are always uh, most of us at least are cutting stablecoin, and the reason for that is that we both know that crypto is volatile, and lately I've not been trading much actually, because it's pretty much a second full-time job. But generally, there is a growing trend with crypto trading here, and that's good.
Okay, that's cool. I'm glad it's expanding. It's an exciting space and a one of the fundamental political technologies, so to speak, is money. And when our money's constantly being inflated and inflation is hitting everyday people like it is now, it makes, chokes off the everyday person. It starves us out basically. When
I can
you,
I can actually add something here that's very important. Money is not actually money. I'm not sure if I've told you this, but think about it. money without actual coverage is pretty much like a gift card from the government. I mean, the value is what they make it to be, and with the current printing of money, um, so let's start from the beginning because that's another large onion. So you have the Fed. The Fed has doubled the volume of USD for the past 2 years, literally. Also, they were buying euro bonds and Japanese bank bonds in I don't know what quantities, but it's huge. And that's actually the only reason why the dollar hasn't fallen. Because actually, the other
Because the
two
other
of
major currencies are also falling.
yeah, they're actually falling worse, and that's what's keeping the dollar, which is absolutely insane. You can't have an actual monetary system, a financial system worldwide where money is not money, where it's not limited, where it doesn't have value. If there was a hard cap on the dollar, like it's on Bitcoin, it would actually gain value. But when you don't have a hard cap on it, and actually one of the biggest issues with governments is that they thrive on inflation. It's like flipping bubble. Um, for example, the United States are the biggest spender in this. You have massive debt, and the only way to prevent that debt is to have inflation. Higher inflation means that easier coverage of that debt, but get more debt. And by the end of the day, I don't think you're ever going to pay that debt. It's like you're living for free. That's it.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
one of the what inflation does is the value of goods and services and assets stays the same, but the debt, the value of the debt in proportion to that shrinks. So for businesses and for governments that have a lot of debt, if they inflate the currency, they can actually kind of grow their way through inflation
yes,
out
exactly.
of debt. So if there was a way to inflate the currency, but our laws were such to where our wages had to be adjusted automatically with that, then it would actually be a good thing overall. I think there's an argument to be made there. But because workers and everyday people and the consumers get choked off, it just ends up hurting things more than it helps anything. But on the debt front, I think that's part of the reason why they're doing this. It's part of the reason why they're
Absolutely.
inflating the currency so much is to try to get their debt. In reality, it's actually to help create more debt because they're not going to learn their lesson. They're not going to change their debt making ways, but it's sort of a way of fixing the issue without fixing the issue. It's a band-aid, solution.
Essentially, debt is the new currency, especially in the United States. I mean, from someone who, I view debt as a plague. When you have debt, you're essentially on a leash. The banks have your chain on you, the Fed has your chain on you, and you're essentially working solely for the government. Not that high taxes don't have the same thing, but it's not as much as debt because when it comes to debt, it's almost like you know, uh, how should I say? It's almost like hearing for the average person. And uh, here, credit cards are not actually. Pretty much no one has a credit card here, and that increases financial discipline in people here. We may not have as many, you know, luxury stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
we are way more conscious about our spending, which is a good thing actually. Because when you have easy access to money, and actually that's one of the biggest psychological issues. Uh, when a financial system makes having money easy, but money which is not money, that's part of the what we discussed. Now, when you have easy access to money, but those money are not actually money because they don't have hard value or hard cap. For example, like gold or other, you know, uh, stock that you can do something with. And with that easy access, knowing that you like something and you're like, I'm gonna get it just because I want it, this actually eliminates the friction between you as the buyer and the seller. And when there's no friction, as they say, it's slippery slope, and you slide down the debt hole fairly easily. And that's actually one of the major issues, I think, with the current financial system, that people don't have, how should I say it, a ground firm understanding of the correlation between their spendings and the worth of what they're getting. It's, as I said, something very deep that
Yeah, they're very.
we may have to make a separate video about just on this topic.
Yeah, yeah, it's a there's a lot of negative side effects that come from having a system where your dollar's always being inflated. And I think it just creates a lot of anxiety in people, that
Oh yeah,
people are constantly running out of money. Basically, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And if you're only moving forward so fast, you're staying in place. It's a faulty system, and it actually slows our growth down. If we kept our currency hard, so to speak, kept our currency strong, it would actually, propel the economy forward faster. But they don't like to. It would not allow them to have the control that they want. So
absolutely, and people would actually be able to gain actual wealth if the currency is strong and stable. But when the currency is pretty much falling all the time, I mean, the growth of personal wealth is way slower than inflation. Always was,
yep.
and that's the major issue. And actually, despite all the backlash against Russia, Putin actually did something great in terms of monetary policy. Currently, all stock from Russia, that means gas, iron, pretty much everything you can trade from it from them in terms of resources, it's traded in rubles, which means that the rubles are pretty much covered in stock, essentially, by having to buy resources in large with rubles. That's what the US did with petrol, by the way, some time ago. And that's how the dollar actually became the global
reserve currency.
Yep, the global reserve currency. And Russia are actually going in that direction with other stock. And that's actually the way to go. You trade in your own currency for hard stock. However, the current, not only political, the current economic climate in the US is based around financial services to a large extent, if you think about it, especially on a global scale. And
say that one more time. Sorry.
From my point of view, currently the US is mostly making profit out of its financial system being as it is. And the problem with this is that this is not actual profit because it doesn't create any added value. It just pretty much abuses the whole system and piggyback on the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's people have called it a shadow tax, and it's a good way of thinking about it. It just it creates a heavy shadow over the whole system. All right. Well, I have one more. It's not really a question, but it's a question asking you a question. Do you have any questions for me, sir, before we wrap up this podcast?
Actually, there was a topic, a philosophical, psychological one that I think it's going to be interesting to talk about. And it actually came up because I got a spam invite on Twitter. So the topic of simping nowadays, that a lot of men have the issue. I mean, why so much women currently are, have OnlyFans, are pretty much whoring themselves out online, and so on and so on. I think the major issue here is that weak men are enabling that behavior. I mean, if no one pays for women on OnlyFans, there would be no OnlyFans.
Yeah.
You know, the demand creates the market, and
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest psychological issues that men face nowadays.
I agree. I agree completely. Yeah, I think if I were to try to say where I think the source of all this is, I would say the source of it would be the loss of belief in God and the loss of traditional values in men and our moral straying to a degree because we're looking for satisfaction and fulfillment and pleasure and so when we move away from what we know we should be doing, we just move into pursuing simple pleasure, and naturally, like the women's beauty is a source of, and women's physical beauty is a source of simple pleasure for many men, and so it's something that is very natural, and often what is natural is not necessarily good. There were certain studies with monkeys where they gave them money, and the first thing that the monkeys did with the money, the males, because the money could be exchanged for food. And then as soon as the monkeys learned that they could do that, then they gave the male monkeys gave the coins to the female monkeys to try to have sex with them. So it's very immediate and natural for men to want that because there's a desperation that happens when you have a system or a moral system or a culture where you have one man and one woman typically. That means that there's a woman out there for every man. They will get wedded and they will have a relationship. When you start to break up that system, what happens is very few men end up sleeping with most women, and many men end up not having a woman to have interactions with. That creates a desperation in men and a weakness in men that leads to many of these behaviors, many of these shifts in behaviors where men are not satisfied or confident in themselves enough, and so they just start chasing down these sources of validation. And yeah, it's to some degree it's going to happen when you have a more freedom-oriented society, when it's just about doing what you feel and just about pursuing your individual interests. People will go down these roads. I think they should be allowed to. Like I would never suggest any kind of laws against it, but we need to dial things back in from a moral standpoint for ourselves. We need to try to be better, stronger people. And we just got to understand where value, like true value, comes from. Value does not come from just watching these things, watching someone on OnlyFans or watching porn or whatever. As a human being, value comes from developing a real life relationship and having a true sexual connection with a real flesh and blood human being. There's these fabrications of value, like with social media. The fabrication of having friends instead of actually having friends.
Exactly, that's simulated. And actually, the biggest issue that enables this behavior, it's actually very engineered. The instant gratification, and people over time with all these technologies and ease of access, as I mentioned earlier, the lack of friction. When there's no friction, when everything is easy, and when you get trained into seeking instant gratification, people stop seeking long-term value. All they go for is instant gratification, and in the end, we reach a point where all that matters is this instant gratification, the dopamine rush, I want this and I want it now because I feel like it, but people don't think of the consequences. They stopped asking themselves about actually things like duty and responsibility, but things that are very, in our father's list, things that were very central to their personalities. Those are generally lacking in our and mostly in the younger generations. Uh, everything you hear about on media and so on and so forth is people want to have rights. We want this, we want that, we want to be recognized and such. But okay, but what you're giving for it? People always want, but they never ask themselves, or in general, they don't think about what they're gonna give, because everything comes at a cost. Nothing is free in this world.
They're not
So
asking if they've earned it.
it's not about earning it. It's about more like an investment. It contributes something, and maybe you get something in return. That's the mindset of the older generation. You give something, and hopefully you get something in return. Well, now it's reversed. Now you want something, and maybe you give something in return if you feel like it. And that's pretty much one of the major issues of society nowadays, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think it's a huge problem. I think it's a problem, but it's a problem we need to solve through being better. I don't have a better way of saying it. This has been awesome, man. I really appreciate you coming on. Your first podcast ever. I know it's got to be make you nervous. It's got to be nerve wracking. And
Oh
I
no.
appreciate you coming on. I appreciate the excellent conversation. And I look forward to going back through this and making notes and doing my research and all that kind of stuff. It'll be really awesome.
It's pretty cool. Now we can do it again sometime. And I've got some experience with this as well.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. You have a good day, boss.
To you as well. Cheers.
Cheers.